right. Well, this looks a little bit different than a typical Sunday. We are doing a little bit of a team message this morning, and so we'll go ahead and jump in right here. We'll be going through Jonah this morning, and I want to start off with a question. Raise your hand if you ever got a detention in school. When you were in elementary school or middle school or high school, detention. Okay, yes. Well, me too. I got a detention. Ben, if you'll go ahead and change that slide over. I didn't bring the clicker up here. So there was a time when I was in 7th grade, and everybody remembers 7th grade. It was a great time. Maybe not. And so 7th grade was fun. I was in 7th grade science. And I was in the back of the classroom, and I was sitting next to this other guy, and we were doing this balance scale assignment. And I think our teacher had asked us to put these little weights onto the scale. And so we were doing that, and it's not very fun to weigh stuff that doesn't weigh very much. And so we started slamming our books down on this scale, and it looked exactly like this. And we were stacking them up really high and seeing if we could get them to balance. And sure enough, our teacher saw us, and so she came back to the back of the classroom and said, "Hey, boys, I don't want you doing this anymore. We're here to do the assignment, and you're going to break the balance beams or the balance scales. And so please do not do this anymore. Do your assignment. I don't want to see this again." So she went back to her seat, and we were putting the small little weights on, and that got boring again. And so we thought, we're at the back of the classroom. We're just going to put these books on here again. So we start stacking these books up. We're kind of being quieter this time. And it's her classroom, like she knows what's going on. And so she sees us again, and she comes back and she gives us these carbon copies of these detention slips that she had written. And I was looking at it, and I got a detention for being defiant towards her and literally doing this when she had asked me not to. And so this story is a lot like Jonah. And so who is Jonah? Jonah is a prophet of the Lord. And what is a prophet? It's basically God's mouthpiece to the people. Back in that time, God used a prophet to communicate what he wanted to say to his people. And so we'll be in Jonah 1, verse 1. The Lord gave this message to Jonah. "Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh. Announce my judgment against it, because I have seen how wicked its people are." But Jonah got up and went in the opposite direction to get away from the Lord to Tarshish, a.k.a. modern-day Spain. He bought a ticket and went on board, hoping to escape from the Lord by sailing to Tarshish. So Jonah, he doesn't want to go because this is a bad group of people. This is like the ruling nation at the time. They're really violent, and so he doesn't want to go to this people. And so I have this picture, actually, of what it would look like for Jonah to live in the United States at the time, because I thought, hey, we understand the United States map. We live in the United States. That's generally the only map we look at. So this is Jonah, his route. If Jonah started in Jacksonville, Florida, northern Florida, this is where God asked him to go, up to like northern North Carolina. I know that's hard to see on there, but it's not too far for us to drive, but that's where God asked Jonah to go. But Jonah, remember, he got up and he went in the opposite direction. The next slide, Jonah would have gone to like Sacramento, California. All right, that's where Jonah went. It was completely opposite of where God asked him to go. And so, verse 4, "But the Lord hurled a powerful wind over the sea, causing a violent storm, and threatened to break the ship apart. Fearing for their lives, the desperate sailors shouted to their gods for help and threw the cargo overboard to lighten the ship. But all this time, Jonah was sound asleep down in the hold. So the captain went down after him. 'How can you be asleep at a time like this?' he shouted. 'Get up and pray to your God. Maybe he will pay attention to us and spare our lives.' Then the crew cast lots to see which of them had offended the gods and caused the terrible storm. When they did this, the lots identified Jonah as the culprit. Why has this awful storm come down on us? They demanded. Who are you? Jonah answered, I am a Hebrew, and I worship the Lord, the God of heaven, who made the sea and the land. The sailors were terrified when they heard this, for he had already told them he was running away from the Lord. Oh, why did you do it? They groaned. And since the storm was getting worse all the time, they asked him, what should we do to you to stop this storm? Throw me into the sea, Jonah said, and it will become calm again. I know that this terrible storm is all my fault. Jonah would literally rather die than go do what God told him to do. He could have been like, yeah, turn the ship around. No, he's like, throw me in. We're going in. Okay. This story is a really simple story. You've probably heard this story, but it has some amazing points, and it's really actually super deep theologically. But what is going on here? Jonah, he gets a word from the Lord, and he just runs in the opposite direction. God asks us to do things sometimes, and we pretend like we don't hear him, or we go kind of preoccupy ourselves and say, I kind of have other plans, actually. Have you ever gotten a text from somebody and you see it and you kind of know who it is and you're like, I'm not going to look at that text. I know what they're asking me to do right now, and I can't look at that text. I'm actually going to go find something else to do, and then I can come back and text them and say, I have other plans. You might have done this, okay? So don't be like, oh, Asher, you do that. No, you might have done this too. Okay, so we all love to go get in our boat of desire and sail towards something else. But God, he kind of likes to rock the boat a little bit. And so he rocks the world of Jonah. And by the way, there's always going to be a boat to Tarshish for us. There will always be a boat to Tarshish. There's always going to be some other thing that we need to do or want to do. There are these little storms in our lives that God allows because he wants us to what? Pay attention. He's trying to get our attention. But look at Jonah. He isn't even looking out for God to get his, he's saying, actually, I'm going to go sleep. He's asleep down in the boat. And the boat is falling apart. People are screaming above him, but he's sleeping. That's actually kind of impressive. I had a guy on my hall, and he would sleep through just about anything. We actually tried to pick up his mattress while he was asleep and move him outside. He did wake up, by the way. And so I hate to break it to us today, but the story of Jonah is a bit of a mirror. And we've brought a mirror today. Sorry if I'm blinding anybody with the lights, but this is the book of Jonah. Imagine this is just a mirror, and we're looking into this mirror when we read this. As a kid, I hated this story. I was so scared. It just scared me. I was like, I don't want God to throw me overboard into a raging sea and get swallowed by a fish. But I don't think that's God's intention what he's trying to communicate in this story. He loves us, and he loves the people around us, and so he's willing to rock the boat a little bit in our lives. Why? To wake us up. I've been guilty of sitting in church before and thinking, there's somebody here that needs to hear what the pastor is saying right now. I really hope they're listening. But I don't want you to do that this morning. I want you to hold up the mirror for yourself this morning and put the mirror in front of your face, because God is trying to maybe wake you up, so pay attention. Last verses. Then the sailors picked Jonah up and threw him into the raging sea, and the storm stopped at once. The sailors were awestruck by the Lord's great power, and they offered him a sacrifice and vowed to serve him. Now the Lord arranged for a great fish to swallow Jonah, And Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights.
So Jonah is in the belly of the fish. He's in a mess of his own making, of his own choices, and a lot of times we think we know those people who, like, okay, they get what they deserve. But what does Jonah do? Jonah starts praying to God because Jonah believes the words of the psalmist when he writes, "Those who know your name trust in you, for you, Lord, never forsaken those who seek you." And it's hard to think of it, but God is a God of mercy. Jonah knows this. Jonah states that those who commit idolatry, those who worship or give that importance to anything other than God, are the ones who reject God's mercy. Jonah finishes his prayer by declaring that salvation is from God alone. The theme of salvation is emphasized in the New Testament also. The meaning of Jesus' name is literally, God is salvation. And when the religious leaders asked for Jesus for a sign from God to prove his authority, that he was someone they should listen to, Jesus answered, "A wicked and adulterous generation asks for a sign, but none will be given to it except the sign of the prophet Jonah. For as Jonah was 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a huge fish, so the Son of Man will be 3 days and 3 nights in the heart of the earth." And it blows my mind that Jesus honors Jonah, the guy who didn't want to do what God wanted him to do in this, but with the sign of the resurrection. Jesus relied on God's salvation to rescue him and justify Christ's obedience even to death on the cross. And that's crazy that Jesus was relying on God to justify him. I feel like when someone insults me or someone says, "Hey, why are you doing this stupid thing?" I'm like, I want to justify myself. I want to be like, no, I'm in the right. I'm right and you're wrong. But that really doesn't help relationships. 8 years ago this summer, my own dreams were dashed. I was in the center of a toxic, hopeless situation. I was struggling with self-harm and suicidal thoughts. My emotions were exhausted, and I had valued friendships that were burned. I was overwhelmed by pain and a sense of being powerless. But I remembered God's compassion. I turned my face to the Lord and prayed, "God, save me. I can't go on without divine intervention. Even if I do not like the outcome, I will trust in you." I felt led by the Holy Spirit to look for a new church. A few weeks later, I showed up at Living Hope. As soon as the youth pastor at the time, Kevin Little, heard that I felt it called to a lifelong call to ministry, he put me on the schedule to preach to the youth group that same semester. It is pretty crazy. In college, I got to do one of my greatest passions, Bible quizzing, and I basically got scholarship money to be a Bible quizzing coach. We just don't have time to go on how much I've been blessed to be a youth worker these past 7 years, but it has just been so blessing to be in the privilege to work with the youth of Rooted and these youth leaders over the years, 7 years. I just want to testify that that the relationships that I thought were burned and gone forever, God mended and has used to open doors to minister not only to those people, but to friends of those people in ways outside of Living Hope that I could not imagine. So when we are in the belly of the big fish, we need to pray. We need to look towards God, to rely on Him to be our salvation. We must treat every question what we might think about as a theological question. How does God see me? What would God have me do in this situation? How do I glorify God in this situation? Like my actions are going to glorify God. Is this actually what Jesus would want me to do? And then, if we think of this and really, if we think of these things, then we will, as the band Petra sings, we will be walking in the light every day and night, living in the Spirit, really out of sight. I know that's cheesy, but I love it. Well, we need to get back to the story. And the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah onto dry land.
Thank you, Matthew. Hi, guys. You ready for Jonah 3? All right, I'm going to read the whole chapter. It's only 10 verses. We can do this, okay? Then the Lord spoke to Jonah a second time. Get up and go to the great city of Nineveh and deliver the message I have given you. This time, Jonah obeyed the Lord's command and went to Nineveh, a city so large that it took 3 days to see it all. On the day Jonah entered the city, he shouted to the crowds this: 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed. That's it. That's all he said. We'll get back to that. The people of Nineveh believed God's message, and from the greatest to the least, they declared a fast and put on burlap to show their sorrow. When the king of Nineveh heard what Jonah was saying, he stepped down from his throne, took off his royal robes. He dressed himself in burlap and sat in a heap of ashes. Then the king and his nobles sent this decree throughout the city: no one, not even the animals from your herds and flocks, may eat or drink anything at all. People and animals alike must wear garments of mourning, and everyone must pray earnestly to God. They must turn from their evil ways and stop all of their violence. Who can tell? Perhaps, even yet, God will change his mind and hold back his fierce anger from destroying us. And when God saw what they had done and how they had put a stop to their evil ways, he did indeed change his mind and did not carry out the destruction that he had threatened. Pretty cool. So I just want to touch real quick on Jonah's amazing sermon. 40 days from now, Nineveh will be destroyed. Really? That's it? He didn't even mention God. He didn't mention his grace, his mercy, his love for the people of Nineveh, but God used Jonah anyway. I kind of feel like Jonah in this moment is like a kid kicking and screaming or like stomping off to do what God asked him to do. Like, fine, I'll do what you asked me to do, but I'm not going to like it, okay? And I'm going to say this my way. And the cool thing is that God used Jonah's horrible sermon to save an entire city of people. So the next time you're worried about sharing your faith with someone, please remember Jonah. That if God can use Jonah, he can use you in your words too, right? For those of you who may not know me, my name is Alyssa. I'm married to Luke, and the two of us, we have 2 kids, Max and Abby. Yep, they're right up here. Hi, guys. I know, they're so embarrassed right now. It's fine. They'll get over it. And God has a fantastic sense of humor. He loves to give siblings to parents who are like night and day. How many parents do we have out there? Raise your hand. Yeah. If you have more than 1 kid, 9 times out of 10, they're like night and day. Now, Max and Abby are very similar in a lot of ways, but they're very different in way more ways than they're similar. And one of the ways that they're different is how they use their money. We have been, I know, it's going to be fine. I asked them if I could tell this story, and they were like, yeah, okay, why not? So, Luke and I, from the time that the kids were really, really little, we tried to teach them how to use their money. We gave them an allowance, and we taught them that they should give 10% to the church to further God's kingdom, and they should save 50%. And so that left 40%, math, right, that they could spend on toys or candy or whatever it is that they wanted to spend. Now, Abby, she's our little saver. She loves to save her money. In fact, 9 times out of 10, she will save more than 50%. She is a great saver. Max? No. He's a spender. Now, to his credit, he's also a giver. And there's a lot of times when Max is spending money on other people. So he's taking his friends out to lunch, especially now that he can drive. 17-year-old, happy birthday yesterday. This is what happens when they give me our microphone. Yay. Or he'll like say, hey, let's go out for coffee. It's on me or whatever, or buy his friends presents. So he's spending money, but he's giving it away. And when Max and Abby were 7, 8 years old, there was a church activity that they wanted to be involved in. And Luke and I thought that it would be a great opportunity for them to participate in the paying for this activity. It was $20 per kid, and we told them that they needed to contribute half. And we gave them several weeks to save up for this. And every week when we gave them their allowance, we reminded them, now you need to be making sure that you're putting money away so that you can pay $10 towards this activity, right? So the time comes for registration for this activity. And of course, Abby comes up with this $10 bill. No problem. Here you go, Mom. This is chump change. Go buy yourself something pretty. No big deal. And that was it. Great. And guess what? Max didn't have the money. He had spent his money. And he came into the kitchen, and he was super sad. And, Mom, I don't have the money. I don't know what to do. And so Luke and I let him know that we were going to have to discuss this, because the truth was, we gave him plenty of opportunity to save that money. And we told him week after week after week, dude, you got to save your money. And he didn't listen. So he went to his room, and he was pretty bummed. And Luke and I were sitting in the kitchen, and we were discussing that the truth is, as parents, we have to teach them that there are consequences for their decision, right? He needed to learn a lesson. And this is a very low-risk opportunity. I mean, it's not like a big deal. And if he misses out on this, it won't be the end of the world. And yeah, he'll be disappointed, but it'll be okay. And we wouldn't be good parents, right? If we just gave him the money, what is he even going to learn? So we had decided we're going to go up to his room, and we're going to tell him, dude, this is what you get. This is just a consequence of you not following directions. But God and Abby had another plan. Abby came into the kitchen, and she had another $10 bill. And she said, Mom and Dad, I know Max didn't save his money, but I really want him to be a part of this. So is it okay if I pay his way too, and he can go with us? Oh my word. Okay, after I used a whole Kleenex box full of tissues to dry my eyes, and I'm a puddle on the floor, I let her know that Dad and I would talk about it, and we would make a decision. And as moved as I was very frustrated, because the truth is, I didn't want Max to go to this. He had not done what I asked him. And it wasn't fair because Abby had saved and Max had not. How fair is that? Ooh. See, the truth is, a lot of times we really want people to get theirs, don't we? We want to see that justice is done. We want to see that people are treated just as they deserve. And my dad used to say something to me. He would get really close to my face and he would say, "Sweetie, you don't want fair." Nobody does. Because none of us deserve what we're getting, and that's what grace is. See, on that day, God and Abby had a plan to extend grace to Max instead of punishment. And in Nineveh, God had a plan to change his mind and choose grace for the city of Nineveh instead of punishment. And how many times do we have the opportunity to choose grace instead of punishment? So Luke and I, we made the decision to choose grace. And we let Abby follow through and pay for her brother to go. And I think this is not the whole story because we don't have time and it's super cute and I always cry. So we won't do that. But if you were to ask Max and Abby when they learned about grace, I guarantee you they would tell you this story. And I'm really thankful that we had the opportunity to choose grace. And I'm glad that God chose grace for Nineveh too and for you.
Uh-oh, they gave the youth pastor the microphone, so let's see where this goes. We're diving in together. Hey, we're diving in now to Jonah chapter 4. And this is something that we've talked about this week at camp, not only at high school camp, but at middle school camp. So, and our students had the absolute pleasure of hearing from our former pastor, Sarah. And it was a blessing. And she is just so good at delivering the word of God that I'm going to steal a little bit of that. No, I'm just kidding. But it was a great week, an inspiring week. But we're going to jump into Jonah chapter 4. And as you know, this is kind of where the children's books, right, that you read growing up, or maybe even the VeggieTales movie a little bit, kind of stop the story, okay? Because yes, the people of Nineveh are redeemed. This is beautiful. This is awesome. And they repent, and this is great. But this is where Jonah becomes a brat, okay? So this story isn't about the big fish, right? Well, first of all, it never says whale, so it's about, this fish. But that's not what the story is about. It kind of is about Jonah being a brat, right? For real, we read this, and we want Jonah to be the hero, right? We want to see that. We wish that Jonah did the right thing and followed God's calling on his life, but he ran, and we want him to be the hero, but he is just a whiny baby, right? That, as Alyssa pointed out, God still uses, which is just crazy. How wild is that? So we are also going to read the entire chapter 4 of Jonah together, so bear with me. It's 11 verses, a little bit longer. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. So we just finished up that the Ninevites had repented, and God did not bring the destruction that he promised. But to Jonah, this seemed very wrong, and he became angry. He prayed to the Lord, "Isn't this what I said, Lord, when I was still at home? This is what I tried to forestall by fleeing to Tarshish. I knew that you are a gracious and compassionate God, slow to anger and abounding in love, a God who relents from sending calamity, a God who is quick to turn back from destroying people. Now, Lord, take away my life." Here he is again. "Take away my life. Kill me." Like, what? This is crazy. "Take away my life, for it is better for me to die than to live." But the Lord replied, "Is it right for you to be angry? Is it right for you to be angry?" Jonah had gone out and sat down at a place, not even answering God, had gone and sat down at a place east of the city. There he made himself a shelter, sat in its shade, and waited to see what would happen to the city. Just like Alyssa pointed out, he is just a pouting child, stomping off out of the city, out of the place where God told him to be. And God asks him this question, "Is it right for you to be angry?" And he just and walks away. Then the Lord God, in his graciousness and in his love, provided a leafy plant and made it grow up over Jonah to give shade for his head, to ease his discomfort. And Jonah was very happy about the plant. Good for you, Jonah. You're pleased now, finally. But at dawn the next day, God provided a worm which chewed the plant so that it withered. When the sun rose, God provided a scorching east wind, and the sun blazed on Jonah's head so that he grew faint. He wanted to die. Oh, my word. Dude, come on. He wanted to die and said, it would be better for me to die than to live. Have you ever, we've been that hot in the last couple weeks where you're like, oh my word. We were at camp. There's no AC in the worship area. And oh, yeah, it was. You want to talk about your shirt just sticking to you all week? It was wild, but it was awesome. It was awesome. But he says, it would be better for me to die than to live. But God said to Jonah again, is it right for you to be angry about the plant? It is, Jonah said. And I am so angry, I wish I were dead. But the Lord said, you have been concerned about this plant, though you did not tend it or make it grow. It sprang up overnight and died overnight. And should I not have concern for the great city of Nineveh, in which there are more than 120,000 people who cannot tell their right hand from their left, and also many animals? God is saying, these people are so lost. Why should I not have concern over them? Do you remember when you were little? Of course you do. When your mom or dad, right, they either got onto you or you went up to them and you're like, hey, can I go spend the night at Jimmy's house? And they said, no. What was your response? Why? Right? You were just like, why? Like, give me a reason. What was their response? Because I said so. That's right. And first of all, what is that? Come on. Parents in the room, I know, like, sometimes that's a good one, right? But that's like a harpoon to the chest, okay? There's no rebuttal. There's nothing I can say to that as a child. It's just like, well, yeah, you did say so, but that's not really a reason, but okay, because I'm going to get in trouble if I argue it any further. But later, sometimes, as an adult, you can look back and you can see that maybe this was the reason. Maybe there was something going on. Maybe, so on and so forth. Maybe there was a reason to it. Or maybe you were just being annoying and your parents were like, no, I'm not going to give into this, okay? But this is sort of like the lesson that we're learning here from Jonah, except that we have an answer. And we have a God who doesn't say, because I said so, right? We have a God that lays out his mission and gives us a calling, right? And we can't always see where it's going to end up, but we know that it is going to be good. And as the band comes back up, if you guys want to go ahead and head this way, we can see that Jonah is not even kind of asking God, but he is complaining that God is not putting his comforts, not just his needs, his comforts, right, over. He wants God to put his comforts over 120,000 people, over the relationship of God and 120,000 other people. So this is where we're going to turn the mirror. I'm going to point it down so I don't blind anybody, okay? But this is where we're going to turn the mirror. We're going to take a look at ourselves. Is our relationship with God, let alone our comforts and our needs, is that more important than the person sitting next to us? Yes, the salvation and our relationship with God is essential. But we are also called to not keep that relationship to ourselves. We are called to share that love and relationship with those around us, with our world, with our community, with our work, with our school. And if you didn't know this, Jesus prays for this. In the time before he is arrested, he prays for you. He prays for us. He prays for everyone here because we are a product of God's mission. So let's read John chapter 17 together, not the whole chapter, but moments before Jesus is arrested. This is his prayer. My prayer is not for them alone, the disciples. I pray also for those who will believe in me through their message, that all of them may be one, Father, just as you are in me and I am in you. May they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. I have given them the glory that you gave me, that they may be one as we are one, I in them and you in me, so that they may be brought to complete unity. Then the world will know that you sent me and have loved them even as you have loved me. Jesus is begging the Lord here that you might be in right relationship with God. Not just that you might hear the message of Jesus and the message of his sacrifice, but that just as Jesus is one with God, that you might be one with God. So I want to leave you today, and we want to leave you with a challenging question, right? A couple challenging questions. Should we not have compassion and love for this world as God had for Nineveh? I don't know about you, but when I read this story, right, I don't want to be Jonah. And I don't want to be Jonah in the story that we're living out now. I want to be like the king that Alyssa read about. The king that turns away from control, turns away from his throne, and goes and sits in ashes and makes himself lesser and spreads this message through his city of repentance and of right relationship. Because Jonah, he gets it wrong. And I think we can say that confidently. I want to, in this story that God is creating, and I want us all to have love and compassion like God does in this story, this radical love and compassion that God has. If not just simply so that the people of this world may know the relationship and peace that I personally have with our wonderful and caring and compassionate and loving God. So as we continue to worship, I challenge you to think about this today. Would you, when you walk out those doors, as the summer wraps up, would you go out and live with the compassion and love that you see from God here in this story and that you've seen personally in your life? Let's worship again together.